Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my channel? Thank you so much. At first, Wes and I were the envy of everyone, a perfect couple. I also thought he was the one for me, and we would happily spend our lives together. But not long after we got married, he suddenly changed. He was never home and was always out fooling around. His friends called me a gold digger, but he ignored them. I had a miscarriage because of him, and he remained indifferent. I said, "Wes, let's get a divorce." He said, "Okay." Later, when I brought him the divorce papers to sign, he broke down. He cried and said, "Eve, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Today is our 3rd wedding anniversary, but he's out drinking with some nobody actress and his buddies." I stand outside the bar's private room, touching my slightly protruding belly. My eyes sting. "Hey, isn't this your sister-in-law asking Wes for money again?" The speaker was Wes's childhood friend, Cox. He smirked, his eyes full of sarcasm. "What's up? How much money do you want this time?" Wes swirled his wine glass in one hand, the other around the beautiful woman in his arms. His gaze lingered on her lips. It was as if I didn't exist. I clenched my fists tightly, my throat burning with unbearable bitterness. "Today is our 3rd wedding anniversary. Do you remember?" I opened my mouth as if to humiliate myself. Before Wes could speak, everyone present burst into laughter. "You really think Wes loves you? Wes would have dumped a gold digger like you a long time ago." Cox looked at me with an air of superiority and utter disdain. I clenched my fists and stared intently at Wes. I don't believe he really doesn't love me anymore. Could love really have disappeared so quickly? He loved me so much during college that he was willing to turn against his family so he could marry me. A minute passed, and Wes finally turned to look at me, but his eyes were cold. "If you want money, ask my mother. Aren't you always good at winning her over?" I bit my lip, lowered my head, and let the tears fall to the ground. "I wanted to say that I didn't come to ask you for money. That one time I asked you for money, you didn't lend it to me, and instead you've been mocking me about it ever since." In the end, I held back, biting my lip tightly. On the way here, I had already told myself that this was the last time I would come to Wes to beg for reconciliation. Although his family was one of the top wealthy families in New York, I didn't want to kneel at his feet and beg a husband who had already changed his heart to come home. On the way back, my mother suddenly called. "Eve, your sister's medical bills can't be delayed any longer. Please beg Wes. They're a wealthy family. A few $100,000 is nothing to him." I gripped my phone tightly, unsure how to refuse. "You brat, are you even listening? You married into a wealthy family, and now you don't care about your family's well-being anymore. What good have I done raising you?" A sharp, piercing sound came from the other end of the line, and I moved the phone further away. "Mom, don't panic. I'll figure something out." I quickly agreed, and finally it quieted down. "Then hurry up." Okay, I hung up the phone, looked up at the sunset inside. 2 years ago, my sister was suddenly in a car accident. Around that time, I also inexplicably started a Cold War with Wes, but for my sister's sake, I still lowered my head and tearfully begged him for $1 million. He wouldn't lend me the money. The final solution was to borrow 500,000 yuan from the bank and raise another 500,000 yuan from my university classmates. I haven't fully paid off that debt yet, and I need money again, but I'm currently unemployed. Where am I going to get the money? I used to have a job after graduating from university. I found an internet job in New York earning $10,000 a month not long after I married Wes. His family didn't approve of me working outside, and he didn't approve at the time either. He also said if others knew that my wife was working so hard outside, they would think I was too poor to support her. He pulled me into his arms, his gaze tender and loving. "Eve, just stay home and be my good wife and give me a big healthy son. Then my mom will never dislike you again." Wes and I were deeply in love at the time, and I desperately wanted his parents' approval, so I quit my job. I learned to cook and take care of the whole household every day. Unexpectedly, in the 2nd year of our marriage, Wes gradually became indifferent. We started a Cold War, and gradually he became the person he is today, indulging in a life of debauchery. Everyone in New York knows that I, his wife, am just a figurehead. Just when I was at my wit's end, a dozen messages popped up in my WeChat group. I opened the chat group with my girlfriends. "Hey ladies, have you guys been checking the class group? I heard Abe went back to China. And he said he's treating the whole class to dinner at 6 p.m. today. Well, I want to go. I almost forgot about it. Messages kept popping up. I opened the long dormant class group chat and scrolled up and down. Abe had even sent a red envelope in the group. I clicked on it casually. 5:20. When that number appeared, I was a little taken aback. This was so embarrassing. What's even more embarrassing is that I had the best luck. Now I'd be too embarrassed to not go. Besides, Abe donated the most during the fundraising. I'm definitely going to this class reunion. I checked the location of the reunion and found it was the same place I just went into. Abe arrived quite early, and when I first saw him I was a little dazed. The aloof academic genius of yesteryear had transformed into a refined and dignified business tycoon. After discussing our careers, we played a game of truth or dare. For some reason, Abe's luck seemed particularly bad tonight. He kept losing. Truth or dare? A male classmate asked excitedly. Abe, truth. The male classmate drew a card from his deck. Who was the first girl you liked? Instantly, everyone's gossip instincts were ablaze. Who is it? Do we know each other? I happened to be sitting opposite him, and the moment I looked up my eyes met his. Captivating gaze. You know each other, he said casually. For some reason I felt like crawling into a hole. The atmosphere became even more electric. The next round of dice rolling continued and Abe lost again. He chose truth again. Who is that person we know? Abe took a sip of his drink and looked at me intently. She was married. It wasn't a good idea to say it out loud. I looked down and fidgeted with my fingers, hoping this would end quickly. Amidst the enthusiasm of our classmates, Abe dropped his aloofness. He drank one glass after another. For some reason he suddenly asked me, Eve, I heard you got married. How are you doing? I hurriedly looked up and everyone's eyes were on me. Before I could speak, my college roommate Lila's eyes widened. No way, you didn't know that? Eve married Wes, a rich kid from New York, right after graduation. Back in school, we all thought Wes was just playing around, but he actually married Eve. Lila glanced at me but didn't continue. I pursed my lips, stood up and said, You guys keep having fun. I have to go. Let's meet again next time. Then I walked straight out of the private room. The air outside was much fresher. I took a deep breath, and the unease in my heart dissipated considerably. Eve, what's wrong? Suddenly, a male voice came from behind me. I turned around and saw Abe. I'm fine. Is Wes good to you? He looked at me affectionately, his eyes seeming to hold 1,000 unspoken words. Oh, sister-in-law, what a refined taste you have, staging some kind of teen idol drama with your old flame. A scornful laugh came from the end of the corridor. I looked up abruptly. It was Wes and his brothers. In that instant I met Wes's cold eyes. His brows were furrowed deeply. I turned around, following my gaze. The two men's eyes clashed as if they wanted to kill each other. I was caught in the middle, feeling a little breathless. I quickly jogged towards Wes, about to explain. He didn't even glance at me and kept walking. Long time no see. Abe extended his hand, but Wes didn't move. Eve is already married, so please keep your distance. A polite statement, but in Wes's mouth it was full of threat. Looking at Abe's hand hovering in the air, I smiled apologetically at him. Then I followed Wes into the car. No one spoke the entire way. The car was so quiet you could hear each other breathing. Several times I wanted to explain, but I held back. He was openly drinking with a woman while I had only exchanged a few words with another woman. I hadn't done anything wrong. Back at the villa, Wes looked at the colorful lights hanging in the room, the cake on the table, and the beautifully packaged box. These were gifts he had prepared for their anniversary. Suddenly, with a crash, the gifts on the table scattered haphazardly onto the floor. Wes kicked the table leg hard. I froze, startled by the sudden violence. Wes slowly turned around, his face dark and menacing. He approached me step by step, a large hand grabbing my neck. Eve, don't go too far. You've married into this family, so you should uphold traditional wifey virtues. If I hadn't happened to catch you, were you planning to sleep with him right away? The pressure on my neck gradually increased, and I shook my head with difficulty. No. Wes suddenly let go, and I plopped down on the ground, gasping for breath. A sharp pain swept through my body, and for no apparent reason my nose stung. Even with my stubborn heart, Tears still streamed down my face. Wes didn't even glance at me before striding out. I was left alone in the large room. The pain in my lower abdomen intensified, and I clutched my stomach, struggling to stand. A warm flow came from between my legs. I looked down and saw red blood trickling down my thigh. I shakily pulled out my phone and called Wes. The phone rang for several minutes, but no one answered. My heart sank with each passing second. I quickly dialed 120. When I opened my eyes again, I was already in the hospital. Wes held my hand, his expression complicated. "Eve, why didn't you tell me you were pregnant?" I was going to tell him on our anniversary, but yeah, they kept something this big from us, and now look what happened. The baby's gone. Anya glanced at me sideways as if looking at a useless piece of trash. My hands trembled as I touched my stomach, looking at Wes with grief. Was the baby really gone? He nodded. Poor child, your mother couldn't protect you. I clutched the sheets tightly in anguish, a suppressed sob escaping my throat. What's the use of crying now? I couldn't even save my child. What right do I have to cry? Anya gave me a disgruntled look. A wave of grievance washed over me. Large tears like pearls streamed down my face. As I cried silently, Anya rolled her eyes, turned and walked away. Didn't you need money? Here, take this card. Wes pulled a bank card from his pocket and placed it in my hand. There are 10 million in there. The cold touch was just like his eyes now. I don't know why Wes and I ended up like this. The most painful thing in the world is watching the person who loves you treat you like a stranger. I had hoped to use the child in my womb to make him come back, but now the child is gone. It seems I have no chance left. Wes, let's get a divorce. I said it with difficulty, finally finding the courage to say it. A hint of surprise flashed in Wes's eyes. Not long after, he nodded listlessly and said coldly, "Fine, consider this 10 million a breakup fee. What else do you want? Do you want that villa in Hadding? Or do you want a car? You can choose any car in the garage." "Thank you, but I don't want any of those," I interrupted him. Wes looked indifferent. "Fine, whatever." I stared blankly down at my stomach, tears streaming down my face, soaking the blanket. Pain overwhelmed me. I didn't even notice when Wes left. Ring, ring, ring. The phone on the table rang. Seeing it was my mother calling, I sighed helplessly. "Mom, I'll transfer the money to you later." The other end of the phone was unusually good-natured. "That's good, Eve. Thank you for your hard work. Don't blame your mother. Your sister wandered for so many years, and we just reunited when she had that car accident. Our family already owes her so much." As I listened to the voice on the phone, I covered my mouth, tears soaking my hands. "Eve, when are you bringing Wes home? He's helped us so much. We should thank him properly, and also introduce your sister to him. We're all family. Why don't you know each other?" My throat felt like it was blocked by a stone. I couldn't open my mouth. Tears splattered onto the phone screen. "Eve, can you hear me?" I quickly wiped away my tears, cleared my throat and said, "I heard you. He's busy with work. He'll be back when he has time." A month later, after I had recovered, I moved out of the villa in Hudong. Actually, it didn't matter whether I moved out or not. Wes hadn't shown up since our meeting at the hospital. I couldn't reach him by phone either. But since we had already discussed divorce, I definitely had to move out. I started sending out resumes to find a job, but I hadn't worked for several years, and my resume only showed a few months of work experience, so I couldn't find a job at all. I had no choice but to swallow my pride and post a message in the class group, asking if anyone could refer me. Abe gave me a job posting saying we needed to meet in person. I arranged to meet him at a Western restaurant. As luck would have it, while we were talking, I saw Wes staring at me. Sitting opposite him was that obscure celebrity from last time. I didn't expect him to be so devoted. It seems he's fallen for her. I stopped looking at him and continued talking to Eve. "Eve, as old classmates, we can discuss salary and such. I happen to need a secretary. What do you think of this position? All I need now is a job. The position doesn't matter anymore." I was about to agree when a male voice interrupted me. "No wonder you wanted a divorce. It seems you'd already found someone else." Wes squinted at me, then glanced at Abe. The waiter at another seat beckoned to the waiter. I didn't want to argue with him. I took the divorce papers out of my bag and signed them. A dark cloud gathered in Wes's eyes. His jaw tightened. You're so eager to divorce me. Have you and him been together for a while now? Abe frowned. Wes, don't wrong Eve. Although I like her, Eve and I are completely innocent. And what do you mean by spending all your time with another woman as a married man? Is she your mistress or something? The woman present glanced awkwardly at Abe and shook Wes's sleeve in a high-pitched voice. Wes, radiating anger, shoved the woman aside. You go first. The woman left reluctantly. Wes, as if caught red-handed, his face darkened. What's it to you? So you mean I can pursue Eve now? You two are getting a divorce soon anyway, aren't you? Abe elegantly poured Wes a glass of wine, giving him a provocative smile. The atmosphere seemed shrouded in dark clouds, as if a storm was about to break. I won't sign the divorce papers and she'll always be my wife, Wes said through gritted teeth. Why bother? If you hadn't interfered back then, Eve would have been. I looked at Abe with a puzzled expression. He explained. I've always liked you back then. I wanted to get to know you, slowly spend time with you gradually, and then confess my feelings when the time was right. I didn't expect the news of you and Wes getting together to break so quickly. Recalling the past, Abe took a regretful sip of his drink. I felt awkward, unsure where to look. It turned out that Abe liking me wasn't just my imagination. I stared at the beef in front of me, my mind racing. Wes and I were definitely going to break up. I can't stand everything he's doing anymore. But before we get a divorce, I need him to come home with me. Otherwise, my mom will kill me. We need to settle this together. Wes sat beside me, his long thin fingers gripping a wine glass, making a creaking sound as if he wanted to crush it. I heard Abe studied abroad for a few years. I didn't expect her to be so open-minded. Are you trying to rob me? So what if I am? The two were locked in a fierce battle, and I felt like a steak being grilled on the table. I licked my lips, forced a smile at Abe and said, That's about it for work, but I need to take care of something first, which will take about a week. Abe nodded. Okay, you can start whenever you're available. No rush. Wes turned to look at me, his eyes blazing with anger. You want to be his secretary? Even a blind man could see what he's up to. Don't you know? I looked him straight in the eye, completely unconvinced. How could a legitimate job be so unbearable in your eyes? Anyway, we're getting a divorce soon, and I don't want to suffer any more grievances. Wes seemed to laugh in exasperation. Fine, you want a job? Then come be my secretary. Why go all the way to someone else's company when you already have one? I sighed helplessly. I stuffed the divorce papers into my bag, looked at Wes expressionlessly and said, Come home with me then. I stood up and gestured to Abe. I'm leaving now. Abe nodded. Wes dusted himself off, stood up and grinned smugly. Goodbye, Abe. Abe smiled and said, Goodbye. Wes slowly walked out, holding my hand tightly. I tried to pull away but couldn't and had no choice but to let him lead me the whole way. I didn't tell my mom about my pregnancy and miscarriage. When I told her I wanted a divorce from Wes, she seemed to have heard something unbelievable. She froze at the table, having just poured Wes a drink. Eve, what are you saying? This joke isn't funny at all. It's the worst thing for a couple to talk about, divorce. Wes chuckled and said, Mom, you're right. Eve was just joking. I mustered my courage and spoke more seriously. Mom, I'm serious. I'm not joking. Wes's smile froze. He forced a smile. Let's talk about our disagreement when we get home. Don't worry, Mom. In his view, it turned out that we had only been having disagreements for the past 2 years. I smiled at him silently. My dad, who is usually a quiet person, also spoke up to advise me. Eve, don't treat marriage like a game. Besides, Wes is so good. If you miss this opportunity, you won't find another like him. He took a sip of his drink and looked at Wes with admiration. I think this son-in-law is excellent. He's tall, handsome, rich, and doesn't mind that we're poor. He even gave money for your sister's medical treatment. Wes's smile froze. Dad, wait, what did you say? You've asked me for money to pay for her sister's medical treatment? Wes looked at me strangely, then asked my parents curiously, Don't you only have Eve, your daughter? I had no idea Eve had an older sister. Oh dear, we only recently met Eve's sister. And before we could even introduce her to you, she was tragically involved in a car accident. My mother sighed again as she spoke. Wes looked uneasy, His hand gripping the cup tightened slightly. So you asked me for money back then, saying it was for your sister's medical treatment? That was all true. His voice was somewhat somber. Otherwise, I looked at him expressionlessly. So how did you manage to settle that million back then? He licked his lips, asking somewhat guiltily. It's none of your business. After this meal, just sign the divorce papers. I don't want to talk about those unpleasant things in front of Mom and Dad. But my dad wouldn't let it go. Eve, you were the one who raised that million, weren't you? I thought you asked Wes for it. My mom looked at me suspiciously. What about the $500,000 you transferred to me a few days ago? Aren't you unemployed? Where did you get the money? I borrowed it from a classmate. I took the card out of my bag and pulled Wes's hand into his. I haven't spent a single penny of this money, so your friends won't call me a gold digger. Hearing this, Wes's face turned extremely ugly. Wes still hasn't signed the divorce papers, but he seems different. He's not as arrogant and domineering as before. He's become rather subdued. Perhaps he's been imagining I'd swindle him out of his money, but since I didn't take a single penny, he's actually become defensive. I know his family looks down on me, including him. In college, Wes was a prominent figure on campus, a third-generation revolutionary and a second-generation rich kid, a true prodigy. We met at a charity event. I was a volunteer and he was the organizer. Initially, I didn't like him because he always had an arrogant attitude which I disliked. However, his participation in numerous charity events changed my prejudice against him. Perhaps it was fate, but we often bumped into each other at various club activities. Before long, he began to pursue me intensely. I always thought he was no different from those rich kids, just someone who wanted to have fun, so I stayed with him with the mindset that he would leave me. But that time on the playground, he confessed his love to me in front of everyone in the school, and kissed me in front of everyone. My face flushed and my heart pounded. At that moment, I secretly made up my mind that this was the person I wanted to spend my life with. Time flies. Years have passed, and his love for me has vanished. My love for him has been worn away by him. Whether he signs the papers or not, my life is about to enter a new phase. I've wasted my best years in this marriage. I should wake up in time. Whether he's a prodigy or someone outstanding in every way is unattainable. It's none of my business anymore. I sent Abel a WeChat message saying I could go back to work. The 500,000 yuan he lent me will be deducted from my salary. I went to work on time, and after getting off work, I would go to the hospital to check on my sister. Life was peaceful. Wes seemed to have disappeared from my life. How could someone as arrogant as him realize his mistake? Even if he did, he wouldn't back down. Besides, he doesn't seem to have done anything wrong, so I can't force him to lend me money. In the hospital, looking at my sister lying motionless on the bed, I took a warm towel and wiped her body. Her face was pale and tears kept sliding down her cheeks. I don't know what she went through in her first 20-odd years of life. Just like Mom said, we really owe her something. After wiping away my sister's tears, I sat beside her and stroked her hand. Sister, you must have hope. I believe that one day you will get better. You're still so young. Seeing her tears fall again, my throat felt tight. I tried to comfort her, saying, "We will definitely bring the person who hit you to justice." Deep down, I had already resigned myself to my fate. These kinds of cases are very difficult to investigate, especially since my sister can't even speak. There are absolutely no leads. The hospitalization has already cost a lot of money, and we have no more to spare. Sir, what is your relationship with the patient? I'm the patient's brother-in-law. A familiar voice came from outside the door. I instinctively turned around. It was Wes. I got up and went over to confirm his words with the nurse. Wes followed me in and we didn't speak the whole time. I pulled out a chair for him. The moment he looked at the hospital bed, he froze on the spot. He turned to look at me in surprise. "How come your sister looks exactly like you?" "We're twins," I said calmly. "She was just born a few minutes before me. As for how my parents lost her, I don't know." Wes seemed stunned, as if his soul had left his body. He looked extremely serious. After about 2 minutes, he suddenly said, "Eve, do you know Nash?" I frowned at him, shook my head and said, "No. Eve, I suddenly have something urgent to take care of. I'll come see your sister another time." He looked anxious. I gave him a dismissive shrug. He strode quickly out, saying into the phone, "Get me the CCTV footage from the third floor of Hualong Shopping Mall from 2 years ago." The mall's name sounded familiar. It was a place I frequented. I didn't quite understand, but I didn't want to think about anything related to Wes anymore. During our time at work, Abe was very kind to me, but like he had said before, he wanted to pursue me and often asked me out to dinner. I felt a lot of pressure, and I had given up on the idea of love. I stated bluntly what every man is most sensitive about. I had miscarried Wes's child. Sure enough, his expression changed when I said that. The usually gentle and gentlemanly Abe paused momentarily, speechless, as the steam from the hot pot on the table rose. He smiled and said, "It's all right. I'm a very progressive person. I don't care about this." I couldn't say anything for a moment. Abe is a great marriage prospect, but I don't have that instant spark with him. I don't want to be in a relationship right now. I told him honestly. Abe smiled and nodded. "It's okay, just take it as a joke. Don't put too much pressure on yourself." Hearing his words, I felt a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. I picked up the beer beside me and clinked glasses with him. "That's much better," I said. "You're my boss. How can the boss lead an office romance?" Abe laughed heartily. "You're right." Once again I saw Wes at the hot pot restaurant. He never eats anything too spicy or oily, and he always tells me to eat less of it. The only time he would give in to me was when I said I wanted hot pot back in college. This time it was just him and his brother. I didn't see a single woman, nor did I see that annoying Cox. I glanced at him, then quickly lowered my head and ate my beef roll, pretending not to see anything. I always can't finish my hot pot, but sometimes I get really cravings. Looking at the food in the pot, I felt it was a bit wasteful. "It's okay, we'll order less next time." Abe seemed to read my mind and I nodded. As we were leaving, Wes grabbed my arm. "Eve, I need to talk to you alone." If it weren't for signing the divorce papers, there wouldn't be much else to say. Wes seemed hurt by my indifference, like an abandoned puppy, head hanging low. He was no longer the smug, arrogant man he used to be. He slowly released my arm. "I'm sorry." This was the first time I'd ever heard Wes apologize so sincerely. For the first time ever, I felt a pang of pity for him, but I suppressed that inappropriate feeling of sympathy. "But Eve, I really have something to tell you. Something very important. It concerns your sister." I was a little shocked, but I also felt he was trying to lie to me. After hesitating for a while, I decided to believe him. "Boss, why don't you go ahead? I have something to take care of, so I won't be going with you." It paused for a moment, then said, "Okay." Wes drove me back to the villa in the east of the lake. The decorations in the room had changed from the previous simple black and white style to a creamy style, which felt very warm and romantic. Wes pulled me upstairs. "Eve, look how beautiful this room is. It's all pink. Even the sheets and duvet covers are pink. And there are our wedding photos on the walls." I asked him to use a pink blanket before, but he absolutely refused, saying that no grown man uses a pink blanket. He led me to each wedding photo one by one. "Eve," he said, "I remember this photo was taken by chance. The photographer captured it and it became the most beautiful and vibrant wedding photo." He then led me into a nursery, sharing some wonderful imaginings with me. If it weren't for this nursery, I think I would have been moved to tears, but my child died because of him. I threw his hand away. "Wes, didn't you say you had something to tell me about my sister?" His eyes looked dejected, but after a moment he smiled and said, "Oh yeah, I'd forgotten. Let's go to the living room and talk. What would you like to drink?" "Oh, I remember you love cappuccinos, so I bought a coffee machine specifically for that." "I don't want anything. If you don't tell me, I'm leaving." As I was saying this, I got up to grab my bag and leave. Wes hugged me from behind, his warm breath brushing against my neck like a small brush. "Eve, I'm sorry. Everything I did before was wrong. I don't ask for your forgiveness, but please let me finish." I turned my neck away angrily and said, "Let go of me." "I'm sorry." Wes took a few steps back, head down, eyes red. I sat back down on the sofa. Wes sat opposite me. "Eve, I've investigated your sister's case and found the culprit. It's Nash, the second son of the Hong Ya Group. I mentioned that name to you last time I saw him 2 years ago at the Hualong Shopping Mall. Wes took out his phone and played the surveillance footage. I took the phone and watched it carefully. At that moment I mistook you for your sister. I thought the person with this man was you, and my brothers were there too. They witnessed everything. I was furious, but I had to save face. Wes's words struck a nerve. I looked up at him, and a strange sense of injustice washed over me again. It was as if the grievances of the past 2 years had finally been redressed. My throat ached as if it were being cut by a knife, and my eyes stung. Then why didn't you ask me then? You've never trusted me, have you? Have I always been that kind of person in your eyes? No wonder Cox said those things about me. You never defended me. You agreed with him, didn't you? I treated you with such sincerity, and you look down on me like this. I'm such a fool. I'm the biggest idiot in the world. I yelled, my head throbbing. Wes hurriedly stood up, hugged me, and stroked my forehead. No, I was sincere with you too. I always have been. It's just that when I saw that scene I was devastated, so I took it out on you, giving you the silent treatment. Cox. I beat him up and cut ties with him. It was all my fault. In the video, the woman is hugging the man and smiling sweetly. The man gives the woman a bank card, and then they start kissing. I suddenly remembered that I went to Hualong Shopping Mall with my sister that day, but she sent me away. No wonder Wes inexplicably started a months-long Cold War with me after that day. I always thought he was having work problems. I never imagined it was like this. So after that, you started living a life of debauchery? Is that your excuse? I'm pregnant, and you think I'm carrying someone else's child, right? I laughed through my tears. In the end, you just don't trust me. Since you want to cheat on me, you assume I will too. No, Eve, I've never been with any other woman. What you saw before was just a fling. That actress was really just putting on an act. I just wanted to see you angry, wanted to see you jealous of me. I didn't know you were pregnant. I never doubted you. I calculated the dates. My forehead gradually felt damp. Wes was crying. He never cries, but today he was crying. A man who valued masculinity above all else was crying. My heart was filled with complicated emotions, and my mind was a complete mess from lack of oxygen. Then Wes's gentle voice came from above. Eve, do you know I like you because you're a kind, unworldly, and sincere girl? We're the same kind of people, which is why we met so many times at charity events during college. Do you remember the first time we met? You didn't even look at me properly, but I was immediately attracted to you. It was during that trip we went to teach in the mountains that you started to look at me more seriously. Wes and I leaned on each other, hugged, and talked for a long time. We talked about the past, why he liked me, why I liked him, his family, his upbringing, his brothers and friends. Finally, we talked about my sister's and Nash's cases. Wes has a very strong network of connections in New York, so this was a piece of cake for him, and Nash was eventually sentenced to life imprisonment. I thanked him verbally. He begged me to move back to the villa on the east side of the lake, but I refused. As for whether or not to sign the divorce papers after that conversation, I wavered a bit. Although I didn't want to admit it, I had to admit that I still loved Wes. He paid off my bank debts and also paid back the money I borrowed from Abe. Although he repeatedly and subtly asked me to work at his company, I refused. After all, Abe had helped me during my difficult time and I couldn't just leave. I continued to live with my parents, and Wes would pick me up from work every day. My parents kept telling me not to argue with Wes and urging me to go back home. Seeing Wes pick me up every day, his attentive face making me feel like I'm back in college, is very comforting. Of course I won't move back. Let's see how long he can keep this up. But on a day when it was pouring rain, Wes didn't come to pick me up. I panicked. I kept calling him, but no one answered. I'd never been so flustered before. I was frantic. I called his mother, and she yelled at me. A mother was crying her heart out, saying her son had been in a car accident in the pouring rain while trying to pick me up. My heart stopped instantly. I didn't even realize when the call ended. I took a taxi to the hospital. As I entered, I tripped and fell, hitting my knee on the steps. My heart was pounding and I was trembling all over. I had never been so scared before. I limped into the clinic and frantically asked which room Wes was in. The nurse was startled by my appearance and led me to Wes's ward. The moment I saw Wes, I couldn't hold back my tears. What happened to your leg? Wes, who had been lying in the hospital bed, suddenly sat up. I limped over and hugged him tightly. I thought I'd never see you again. My car was flooded, just a few minor damages. Why are you crying like this? Wes stroked my head, a sly grin on his face. Are you that afraid I'll die? Look, only my leg and arm got scratched. The rest are just minor cuts and scratches, he said, showing off his muscles. Seeing my red, swollen eyes and my limping leg, he quickly sat down. How come your injury seems more serious than mine? He said hurriedly, looking down at my knee. I stopped him, shook my head and said, it's not serious, I just tripped on the steps. Wes looked up and around. Who's trying to ruin my relationship with Eve? Look how worried my wife is, she even tripped and fell. What if something happens on the way? If anyone does what that brat Cox did, I'm cutting ties with him. Wes, I didn't say that. Neither did I. If I had, you'd probably thank me. A few people chimed in, each adding their own comment. Wes's mother suddenly walked in, tears of joy streaming down her face. Wes, she said, your full checkup was all fine. That's wonderful. Wes glanced at his mother, raised an eyebrow and asked, Mom, did you tell Eve I was in a car accident? Yeah, if you hadn't gone to pick her up, would things have turned out like this? She looked at my disheveled appearance, a little guilty. I had indeed exaggerated a bit. Mom, seeing that Wes was about to get angry, lowered her voice. Isn't that all to get your wife to come home and live here as soon as possible? Otherwise, how long are you going to keep chasing her like this? Wes's lips curled up slightly. That's true. After confirming that Wes was all right, we were discharged from the hospital. I also moved back to the Lake East Villa. Thankfully, it was all a false alarm.